James moved carefully through the battlefield, his medical scanner sweeping back and forth as he searched for signs of life. The device's soft beeping was the only sound besides the distant rumble of artillery and the crunch of his boots on the rocky ground. His dark combat armor was scratched and dented, evidence of the day's brutal fighting. He had been searching for 3 hours, but found only the dead. His own unit was gone, wiped out in the initial assault. Now he worked alone, driven by the oath he had taken as a combat medic, to help anyone in need, regardless of which side they fought for. The scanner's beeping suddenly changed pitch. James stopped, adjusting the settings to get a better reading. There, among the wreckage of what looked like an alien medical transport, a life sign, barely registering but still there. Moving quickly but cautiously, he made his way toward the signal. As he got closer, he saw her, a Bright Star medic, half buried under debris. Her blue skin was alarmingly pale, and the bioluminescent patches characteristic of her species were almost dark. Bad signs. James knelt beside her, his scanner already giving him vital readings. Multiple injuries, severe blood loss, core temperature dropping. He muttered to himself, falling into the familiar rhythm of battlefield triage. The Bright Star's eyes were closed, but a slight flutter of her chest showed she was still breathing. He reached for his medical kit, then hesitated for a split second. 2 hours ago, her people had been trying to kill him. But looking at her now, he saw not an enemy but a fellow medic, someone who, like him, had come to this battlefield to save lives, not take them. Working quickly, James pulled out a universal plasma substitute. It wasn't perfect for Bright Star physiology, but it would help with the blood loss. He attached the bag to an auto-injector and carefully placed it in her arm. Next came the portable heat generator, which he set up nearby to combat the falling temperature. "Hang in there," he said softly, though he knew she couldn't hear him. "I'm not letting you die out here." The debris pinning her lower body was his next challenge. James examined the fallen cabinet carefully. Moving it wrong could make her injuries worse, but leaving her trapped wasn't an option. Night was coming, and with it, temperatures that would kill them both if they stayed exposed. He activated the servo assists in his armor, feeling the familiar hum as the powered joints came online. Carefully, he positioned himself and began to lift. The cabinet was heavy, but his enhanced strength was enough to raise it slowly. As soon as there was space, he used his boot to slide a support strut underneath. The Bright Star medic stirred slightly, her bioluminescent spots flickering weakly. James quickly scanned her legs, bruised badly, but not broken. Good news, finally. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and James instinctively ducked as artillery shells passed overhead. The battle was getting closer again. They needed shelter, and soon. He looked around, evaluating options. The medical transport was too damaged, but about 50 meters away stood the remains of a defensive bunker. Its walls were still mostly intact. It would have to do. James gathered his supplies and gently lifted the alien medic. She was lighter than he expected, though that might have been his armor's assistance. Her skin felt cool against his armored hands, too cool. The plasma substitute was helping, but she needed proper medical attention soon. "Don't worry," he said, starting toward the bunker. "I've got you. Just stay with me." As if in response, one of her bioluminescent patches glowed slightly brighter. James smiled behind his helmet. He had seen too much death today. This one, at least, he could save. The sun disappeared behind the horizon as he carried her to safety, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The night would be dangerous, but they would face it together. A human and an alien, both dedicated to preserving life in the midst of war. The battlefield fell silent as the last echoes of gunfire faded into the orange sky. Smoke rose from burning vehicles and twisted metal scattered across the rocky ground. May lay still among the wreckage of her medical transport, her pale blue skin growing darker as blood seeped from a wound in her side. Her eyes, large and silver, like all members of her Bright Star species, blinked slowly as she tried to stay conscious. The attack had come without warning. One moment she had been treating wounded soldiers in the back of the transport. The next there was a deafening explosion as enemy fire tore through their shields. May remembered the screams of her patients, the feeling of being thrown against the wall. And then darkness. Now she lay here, half buried under a fallen medical cabinet, watching her own blood mix with the purple soil of this border world. Her natural bioluminescence, usually a gentle glow beneath her skin, flickered weakly like a dying light bulb. Each breath sent sharp pains through her chest, and she could taste something metallic in her mouth. Around her, the battlefield told its own story of destruction. The remains of both human and alien vehicles dotted the landscape. Bodies wearing the dark green of the Earth Defense Force lay not far from the silver-gray uniforms of the coalition forces. In death, they seemed to share the same peaceful expression, as if the fighting no longer mattered. May tried to move her arm to reach the medical scanner attached to her belt, but pain shot through her shoulder. She bit back a cry, her luminescent spots flaring briefly with the effort. The cabinet that trapped her lower body shifted slightly, sending fresh waves of agony through her legs. She wasn't sure if they were broken or just badly bruised. Without her scanner, she couldn't tell how bad her injuries were. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the battlefield. May knew that on this planet, nightfall brought temperatures well below freezing. Without shelter or medical attention, she wouldn't survive the night. Her training told her exactly how long it would take to die from blood loss or exposure. The knowledge wasn't comforting. She thought about her family back home, her parent group waiting for news, her younger siblings who had been so proud when she joined the medical corps. They had believed in the cause, in protecting their worlds from human aggression. Now, looking at the dead scattered around her, May wondered if anyone really knew what they were fighting for anymore. A distant explosion made her flinch. The battle had moved on, but stray shots and artillery still lit up the horizon. Each flash illuminated the scene around her in stark detail. The broken medical supplies scattered across the ground. The body of her friend and fellow medic Tom lying face down a few meters away, his normally bright green scales now dull and lifeless. May's vision began to blur. The pain was getting worse, and she could feel herself growing weaker. Her bioluminescence dimmed further, barely visible now even in the growing darkness. She tried to focus on her breathing, using the meditation techniques she had learned during her medical training. In, out, each breath a small victory against the creeping darkness. A sound caught her attention, the crunch of boots on rocky ground. Someone was walking through the battlefield. May's heart raced. Friend or enemy? She tried to turn her head to look, but her neck muscles wouldn't cooperate. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the soft beeping of what sounded like a scanner. May wanted to call out, to signal for help, but fear kept her silent. Her people had been fighting the humans for so long that the sight of their dark armor struck terror into the hearts of even the bravest coalition soldiers. If it was a human patrol, would they help her or finish what their weapons had started? The footsteps stopped nearby. May held her breath, her dying bioluminescence giving one last weak pulse. Through her fading vision, she saw a shadow fall across her face. Then everything went black. The bunker was cold and dark, but at least it kept out the bitter wind. James had sealed the entrance with debris and emergency thermal sheets, creating a small space that trapped what little heat they had. His portable light cast strange shadows on the concrete walls as he worked. May drifted in and out of consciousness, her silver eyes opening occasionally to watch the human medic move around their shelter. Her bioluminescence had strengthened slightly, creating a soft blue glow that mixed with the artificial light. The plasma substitute was working, but she still felt weak. "Your body temperature is rising," James said, checking his scanner. "That's good. The universal plasma seems compatible enough with your system." He spoke in a calm, steady voice, the kind used to soothe injured patients. May tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. James noticed and quickly brought a water container to her lips. The liquid was warm and had a strange taste, probably filtered through his human medical equipment. But it helped. "Thank you," she managed to say. Her voice was rough but clear. "Why? Why did you help me?" James continued checking her vital signs as he answered. "I'm a medic. That's what we do." He paused, looking at her torn medical uniform. "Just like you." A distant explosion made them both turn toward the sealed entrance. The battle was still raging somewhere out there, but it felt far away now, like a storm on the horizon. "My unit," May said, trying to sit up slightly. "Did you find any others?" James gently helped her adjust her position before answering. "I'm sorry. The transport was. There were no other survivors." He watched her face carefully, seeing the grief wash over her features. "My unit is gone too. Direct hit from artillery this morning." May's bioluminescent spots dimmed slightly, an involuntary response to emotional pain among her people. "This war, it makes no sense anymore. Do you even know why we're fighting?" "Territory disputes, resource claims, the usual reasons they give us," James replied, checking the seal on the entrance. The temperature outside had dropped well below freezing, and their shelter was getting colder. "But no, it doesn't make sense. Not when you look at the cost." They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. James shared some emergency rations, bland protein bars designed to be digestible by most known species. The food helped, giving May strength she desperately needed. "Tell me about your world," James said as he adjusted the heat generator. "I've never met a bright star before. Not like this anyway." May's spots brightened slightly. "It's beautiful. 3 suns, so we never have true darkness. The whole planet glows like we do." She gestured to her bioluminescent patches. "The cities look like they're made of living light." "Sounds peaceful," James said, a hint of longing in his voice. "It was before the war." May shifted, wincing at the pain in her side. "What about Earth? I've only seen pictures in intelligence briefings." James smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "One sun, but thousands of colors. Oceans, deserts, forests, everything you can imagine. My home was near mountains that touched the clouds." A strange sound from outside interrupted their conversation. Both froze, listening intently. It came again, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the bunker's walls. "What was that?" May whispered, her bioluminescence dimming instinctively. James checked his scanner, his expression growing serious. "Large heat signature. Moving closer." He reached for his sidearm. The battle must have attracted the local wildlife. This planet's predators are supposedly quite aggressive. The growl came again, closer this time. May tried to stand, but James gently pushed her back down. "Save your strength," he said quietly. "We might need it before this night is over." They could hear heavy footsteps now, circling their shelter. Something big was out there, and it had found them. The creature's claws scraped against the bunker's outer wall, sending chills down both James and May's spines. James checked his sidearm's charge. Only half power after the day's fighting. Not enough to take down something big. "How good is your night vision?" he whispered to May, keeping his eyes on the sealed entrance. "Better than yours," she replied, her voice equally quiet. "My species evolved under 3 suns. We can see well in any light condition." She paused, then added, "And I can make light." James looked at her bioluminescent patches, which were now glowing steadily. "Can you make them brighter?" May nodded slowly, understanding his plan. "Much brighter. Bright enough to blind most creatures temporarily. But," she gestured to her injured side, "it takes energy I might need for healing." A massive impact shook the bunker, and bits of concrete dust rained down from above. The predator was testing their shelter's strength. James moved closer to May, helping her into a better position. "If that thing breaks through, we won't have to worry about healing," he said grimly. "Can you stand?" May gripped his arm and pulled herself up, gritting her teeth against the pain. "I can stand." Just, just give me a moment. Another impact, harder this time. A crack appeared in their makeshift barrier. Through it, they caught glimpses of the creature, scales glinting in the moonlight, eyes glowing with reflected light, teeth longer than James's combat knife. Native apex predator, James muttered. Triangle-headed viper wolf. Intelligence reports warned us about these. They hunt in the dark, and they don't give up once they pick a target, May finished. We studied them too. The barrier creaked ominously. James positioned himself between the entrance and May, weapon ready. When it breaks through, wait for my signal. Hit it with everything you've got. May steadied herself against the wall, gathering her strength. Her bioluminescent patches began to pulse slowly, building power like a charging battery. The final impact came with a deafening crash. Their barrier exploded inward, and the viper wolf burst through in a shower of debris. It was enormous, easily 3 meters long, with a triangular head full of razor-sharp teeth. Its 6 legs ended in hooked claws, and its scales shifted color to match its surroundings. James fired 3 quick shots, the energy bolt striking the creature's armored hide with little effect. The viper wolf lunged forward, its massive jaws snapping at him. Now, James shouted, diving to the side. May's entire body flared with brilliant blue-white light, filling the bunker with the intensity of a small sun. The viper wolf reared back, its sensitive eyes overwhelmed by the sudden burst. It thrashed wildly, slamming into the walls. James didn't waste the opportunity. He rushed forward, firing directly into the creature's now exposed throat, its only vulnerable spot. The viper wolf screamed, a sound that shook dust from the ceiling. But it wasn't finished. Blinded and wounded, it lashed out with its tail, catching James in the chest. He slammed into the wall, his weapon clattering away. May, despite her injuries, pushed herself forward. Her light grew even brighter, focused now into concentrated beams from her hands, a defensive ability her species rarely revealed to outsiders. The energy struck the viper wolf's eyes, and this time the creature retreated, scrambling backward through the broken entrance. They could hear it thrashing outside, its cries of pain and fury fading as it fled into the night. May collapsed, her light dimming to its normal gentle glow. James rushed to catch her before she hit the ground. "That was incredible," he said, helping her sit. "I didn't know your species could do that." May managed a weak smile. "We all have our secrets. Thank you for trusting me with your life." "Thank you for saving it," James replied, already checking her vital signs. The energy display had drained her, but her wounds hadn't reopened. "Rest now. I'll find a way to reseal the entrance." As James worked to secure their shelter again, May watched him with new understanding. Together, they had faced death and survived. Out here, far from the politics and propaganda of their respective sides, they had found something rare: trust. Dawn was approaching, but the bunker remained dark, except for May's soft blue glow. She sat propped against the wall, watching James check her vital signs for the 3rd time in an hour. His face had grown increasingly worried with each scan. "Something's wrong," he said finally, showing her the medical readout. "Your body is rejecting the universal plasma. I've never seen this reaction before." May studied the display, her silver eyes narrowing. "It's not your fault. There's something I need to tell you." She took a deep breath, wincing at the pain in her side. "The real reason I was on that medical transport." James sat down beside her, listening intently. Outside, the wind howled across the battlefield, carrying the distant sounds of sporadic fighting. "2 weeks ago, I discovered something in our medical database," May continued, her bioluminescence flickering with emotion. "Records of secret experiments. Someone was modifying our biology, making subtle changes to our genetic code." "Your own people did this?" James asked, surprised. May shook her head. "No, the changes came from outside. A third party manipulating both sides of this war." She gestured to her wounds. That's why your medical supplies aren't working properly. My biology isn't exactly what it should be." James processed this information, his military training kicking in. "Actually, that makes sense. We've noticed strange patterns in this war. Battles that seemed arranged, intelligence that was too perfect, both sides making decisions that prolonged the fighting." "Exactly," May said, her voice growing stronger despite her weakening body. "I was bringing evidence to our high command when we were shot down. But it wasn't random fire that hit us. The attack was too precise." James stood up suddenly, moving to his equipment pack. He pulled out a secure data tablet and showed it to May. "2 days ago, my unit intercepted unusual communications. We thought they were enemy transmissions, but they didn't match any known coalition codes." May's eyes widened as she looked at the data. "These patterns, they're similar to the ones I found. Someone wanted to stop both of us from sharing what we discovered." "But who? And why?" James asked, though he had a growing suspicion. "War profiteers," May said grimly. "An organization selling weapons and supplies to both sides. They've been manipulating us for years, keeping the conflict going, even changing our biology to make us more dependent on their medical supplies." James checked his scanner again, his jaw tightening at the readings. "Your condition is getting worse. The genetic modifications are fighting against the treatment." He ran a hand through his short hair, frustrated. "There has to be a way to help you." May's bioluminescence dimmed slightly. "There might be. In my medical kit, there was a data crystal with research notes, if it survived the crash." "I'll go look for it," James said, already moving toward the entrance. "The sun's almost up. It should be safe enough now." "Wait," May called weakly. "There's more you need to know. If what I discovered is true, this war, everything we've been fighting for, it's all been orchestrated. Both sides think they're defending themselves, but we're all just pieces in someone else's game." James paused at the entrance. "Then we need to expose them. But first, we need to keep you alive." He checked his weapon's charge. "I'll be back soon. Try to rest." As he slipped out into the pre-dawn light, May watched him go with mixed emotions. Here they were, supposed enemies, now working together against a hidden threat. Her people had always seen humans as aggressive, dangerous creatures. But now, ironically, a human was risking his life to save her. She just hoped they would both live long enough to reveal the truth about this war. The morning sun cast long shadows across the battlefield as James carefully picked his way through the wreckage. The medical transport lay where they'd left it, its twisted metal frames still smoking in places. He moved quickly but cautiously, aware that he was exposed out here. His scanner swept the area, searching for any sign of the data crystal May had described. The device's range was limited by the residual energy interference from yesterday's battle, forcing him to check each piece of debris carefully. Back in the bunker, May fought to stay conscious. Her bioluminescence flickered weakly, and her breathing had become shallow. The genetic modifications in her system were attacking the human medical treatments like an aggressive immune response. She could feel her strength fading with each passing minute. A sudden beeping from James's scanner caught his attention. Something was giving off a faint energy signature near the transport's crushed medical cabinet. He dropped to his knees, pushing aside broken equipment and shattered supply containers. There, a small crystal cylinder, still intact despite the destruction around it. James reached for it, but stopped as his scanner picked up something else. Movement coming from multiple directions. His military training kicked in as he pressed himself against the transport's remains. 3 figures emerged from the morning mist. They wore unmarked black armor, different from both human and coalition designs. Their weapons were raised, scanning the area methodically. "The crystal must be recovered," one of them said through an electronic voice filter. "No evidence can remain." James's mind raced. These had to be agents of the organization May had discovered, the ones profiting from the war. They were here to clean up any traces of their involvement. In the bunker, May heard familiar engine sounds, A ship was approaching, but something about its signature was wrong. It wasn't using standard coalition or human frequencies. She tried to reach for her communicator to warn James, but her body wouldn't respond. James watched as the black armored figures moved closer to his position. He couldn't reach the crystal without exposing himself, and he couldn't fight all three with his half-charged weapon. But without that data, May would die, and the truth about the war would stay buried. Making his decision, James pulled a small device from his medical kit, an emergency beacon meant for calling evacuation ships. He modified its frequency to broadcast on all channels and threw it as far as he could away from his position. The distraction worked. As the beacon blared to life, the three figures turned toward the sound. James lunged forward, grabbing the crystal and rolling behind a piece of twisted metal as energy bolts scorched the ground where he had been. "Target sighted," one of the figures shouted. "Terminate immediately." James ran, zigzagging between debris as weapons fire erupted around him. The crystal was secure in his armored chest pocket, but he was still too far from the bunker. His pursuers were gaining ground, their advanced armor allowing them to move faster than he could. Just then, a familiar sound cut through the chaos. Coalition dropships, followed by human rescue vessels. Both sides had picked up the beacon's signal. The black armored figures hesitated, then quickly retreated into the mist. They couldn't risk being seen by either military force. James didn't waste the opportunity. He sprinted back to the bunker, his lungs burning from the exertion. Inside, he found May barely conscious, her silver eyes struggling to focus on him. "Got it," he said, connecting the crystal to his medical scanner. Data streamed across the screen. Research notes, genetic codes, and most importantly, treatment protocols. "Hold on, May. Just hold on a little longer." Outside, the sounds of approaching ships grew louder. Soon, they would have company from both sides. James worked frantically to synthesize the correct treatment from his medical supplies. Everything now depended on whether he could save May in time to reveal the truth about this war. The bunker echoed with the sound of landing ships as James administered the treatment, synthesized from May's data crystal. Her bioluminescence had almost faded completely, but as the modified medicine entered her system, spots of light began to pulse stronger. "Coalition forces, this is Major Reed of Earth Defense." A voice boomed from outside. "We have you surrounded. Release any survivors and surrender immediately." "Earth Defense, this is Commander Bright of Coalition Command," another voice responded. "Our readings show our personnel in that bunker. Stand down and allow us to retrieve them." James looked at May, whose silver eyes were now clearer as the treatment began to work. "Ready to change everything?" he asked, helping her sit up. May nodded, her strength slowly returning. "They'll both want to shoot first and ask questions later. We need to show them the truth before they start fighting again." The entrance to the bunker filled with light as both sides positioned their forces. James stood, raising his hands. "This is Combat Medic James Miller," he called out. "I have sensitive intelligence for both commands, and I have a coalition medic who needs immediate attention." There was a tense pause. Then Major Reed spoke again, closer now. "Miller, you're supposed to be dead. Your whole unit was reported lost." "Please," May called out, her voice stronger than before. "What we have to show you is more important than this battle, than this whole war." Moments later, the bunker was crowded with officers from both sides, weapons lowered but ready. Their expressions showed shock at seeing the human and coalition medic working together. James connected the data crystal to a larger display screen from one of the rescue ships. "What you're about to see proves that neither side started this war. We've all been manipulated by an organization profiting from our conflict." The evidence was undeniable. May's research data showed the genetic modifications, while James's intercepted communications revealed the pattern of manipulation. Together, they painted a clear picture of corruption and greed that had cost millions of lives. "These same people tried to silence us this morning," James added, describing the black armored figures. They've been working to keep this war going, selling weapons and supplies to both sides. Our medical transport wasn't shot down by humans, May explained, now standing with James's help. It was targeted because I discovered their plans, just as they tried to eliminate James's unit when they intercepted similar information. The officers studied the data in stunned silence. Years of hatred and suspicion began to crack in the face of overwhelming evidence. Major Reed was the first to speak. If this is true, then every battle, every death, was orchestrated, Commander Bright finished, looking at her former enemy with new understanding. But they made a mistake, James said, gesturing to May. They thought leaving us for dead would bury the truth. Instead, it showed us that we're not so different after all. May's bioluminescence glowed strongly now, her recovery progressing thanks to the proper treatment. A human risked his life to save an enemy, then trusted me enough to help expose this deception. Perhaps that's what they feared most, that we would see past our differences. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Both commands called for immediate ceasefire orders. Investigation teams were assembled. The evidence was transmitted to both governments, and the hunt for the hidden organization began. 1 month later, May and James stood on a platform before a mixed crowd of humans and coalition species. They were being honored for their role in ending the war, but more importantly, they were announcing the formation of a new joint medical response team. The same skills that helped us survive can now help others, May told the audience, her bioluminescence bright with emotion. Human and coalition medicine working together, saving lives instead of taking them. James smiled at his former enemy, now his closest friend. Sometimes, he added, the greatest healing comes from learning to trust those we were taught to fear. Above them, ships from both fleets flew in formation, no longer as adversaries, but as partners in a hard-won peace. The war was over, not through force of arms, but through the simple act of two medics choosing to save each other.